I'm Aaron Sparks with Edge of the Web Radio here at Forbes Innovation Summit in Indianapolis, 2014. We have the privilege of being able to speak with Angie Hicks of Angie's List. Hello there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks.
You just got off stage, and there was a panel of discussion panel up there.
Right.
Got a few questions for you, but first I want to hear the story of Angie's List, and just give us a perspective from the entrepreneur getting involved and actually how it came to be, where you are right now.
Sure. So, we started Angie's List 20 years ago. It was pre-internet days, and my co-founder was actually trying to rehab an old house in Columbus, Ohio, and was having trouble finding contractors. When he had lived in Indianapolis prior, there was a little business that helped you find who was the best in town when it came to contractors. Mm-hmm. And when he started looking around, he realized that that little business was special just to Indianapolis, and thought, here's an opportunity. And so I had been his intern when I was in college. So he called me up and said, hey, what about forgetting your consulting opportunity you have? Why don't you come and let's try to start this business ourselves? So I kind of joke around. Foolishly, I got in my car and
famous last words there.
Exactly, and off I went to Columbus, and still at it today.
Fantastic. Now, you use the internet to share opinions on service companies, and you turned it into a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company. You're not satisfied only with your own stunning success. You're actually focused on other entrepreneurs, and you're giving back to this entire. That's why you're here today,
right.
Just on the topic of innovation and trying to help entrepreneurs as they're starting up as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I love about Indianapolis is our business community and our tech community are really close entwined. I mean, it's a very collaborative environment. People know each other, they talk to each other,
Absolutely.
They get those introductions to, first-time entrepreneurs, things like that, which I love. That's it's kind of a neat opportunity. So, getting the chance to see these companies. I remember there's a company in town called Lessonly, and it was started by one of our Orr Fellows, who's this entrepreneurship program we put together years ago. He came and was pitching his store. I just loved his business idea. It's just like, seeing that and seeing that passion in young people is contagious. And there's the part of me that was like, I remember I knocked on doors and needed people to say yes. How do you help them get enough yeses to keep going?
Now that's interesting because there's a number of beginning organizations here, a year or 2 years old, that are actually focused on almost like an entrepreneurial ecosystem. There's Launch Fishers and Launch Indiana.
I was just at Launch Fishers 2 weeks ago doing a presentation.
What a great environment, because it's not only entrepreneurs, but you have sage guidance factors
coming in. Yeah, I mean, the amount of programming that have been invested, whether it be from Verge or Checkpoint. These launch sites, I mean, there's just a ton of support that's being created that, that just wasn't there 20 years ago. I mean, this wasn't like,
not even a decade ago.
Right,
This is all new terrain.
So they're being collaborative, they're working with one another, and they've got the advice of folks that have been down that path before. So it makes it a much less scary endeavor than it was back in the day.
And what you're also seeing is that these same leaders are coming back around into those organizations and giving back. So as these fledgling entrepreneurs go out into the real world and have a little bit of guidance from people that have been beaten up a little bit, right? They can come back and actually there's a great return, for lack of a better term, return on investment of these individuals giving back to their communities.
Right.
There's an overused term here, but it's very innovative. It's very new, and are you seeing this across the country in different areas of the country, or is this something new that's coming out of the Midwest?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to kind of where I've seen it. I mean, I see this one very much firsthand. I think it's very forward-thinking, and and has been working and percolating over the last few years, and I can only hope that other cities are doing this, because I think it's one of those things that will make it attractive to young people to stay in the community. It's like, oh, I've got a very collaborative way that I can kind of learn about kind of what's the latest and greatest thing going on. Even if I've got a regular day job, I could go do this in the evenings and weekends and kind of dream about the business I want to start.
When was this a decade ago?
Yeah, there was none of this. There was none of this.
You mentioned a couple of concepts when you're on the panel. You talked about frugality, and then you also talked about innovation. Now, how do they actually coexist?
Oh, everything. I think they can exist in harmony together. You know, it's I think innovation doesn't always have to mean kind of big bet, big dollars. I think innovation can happen in the way we think, the way we process, and I'm always a firm believer in you should walk before you run.
I got another question for you. I've got a daughter.
Yeah.
And I know that you are focused on helping women in business lead. If you were to tell, she's 11 years old right now, if you were to give her any guidance as she's starting off her directions and she's wanting to learn about business, what do you give regularly to women in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, you know, don't be afraid to become familiar and kind of get to know what it'd be like in business. So finding a mentor if you can, or kind of understanding that. I mean, I think I'm interested to see what, you know, kind of, I have an 11-year-old daughter as well. I'm interested to see what they're going to be like compared to what we were, because, you know, they're living in a world where there are a lot more female leaders and kind of, you know, kind of it's a different dynamic. You know, so just some of that naturally is going to happen. But then encourage them to, you know, explore and experience things, you know, much more than we were probably encouraged as young people.
Absolutely.
So, and realize that, you know, life isn't a choice. It's not like, oh, I'm going to have kids or I'm going to have a career. You can do both.
You can absolutely do that.
You can do
with
both.
Technology now at our
Right.
disposal. It's a whole different landscape. It
Yeah.
really is. As you've been part of the summit today, just looking at the summit, what one word would you actually use to describe what you've heard and the conversations that you've had today?
I mean, it's exciting. I mean, you know, it really is. I mean, just to see, you know, the group that they brought together today, and, you know, what their experiences are, and kind of what, you know, where they're kind of what their next step is. It's just really neat to see that kind of energy in a room. So, you know, I'm very thankful to Forbes for kind of bringing that group together, because I think they've got a really special conference.
You know, as we talk about the local type of incubation groups here, do you think there could be something to the thought of actually picking up and having these type of groups traverse the country, just very much like Forbes is doing right now, but you've got these big concepts of innovation. And as much as that's great from an inspiration standpoint, that's still a 50,000-foot level. And then you have the tacticians, the tactical innovation that could actually come in and be part of almost like a growth serum in different areas of the country. Have you come across anything like that before? Or
I mean, I haven't, but I think one of the things that we also have to kind of unpackage a little bit is sometimes the word innovation can be scary.
Right.
You know, that could be like, oh, I'm not the great creator of kind of brilliant ideas. I mean, innovation does not mean you have to come up with, you know, the next huge business. It's like sometimes it's a little idea. It's a little idea that can be, you know, something that kind of takes off. So, you know, don't be afraid to explore those and don't discard them. Don't discard them. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm like, our innovation at Angie's List was copying another business.
Right.
Like, I mean, like, let's think about that.
Right.
We copied another business idea. We didn't come up with our own. We're not unique, you know, and we ended up acquiring that business after we started. But, you know, it doesn't always have to be, you know, you can be innovative and a great entrepreneur without being that great creative energy.
Something you said on the stage that really struck a chord with us. You said you can have a mediocre idea and good talent. That's actually stronger than a good idea and mediocre talent. So when it gets down to it, it doesn't have to be a large innovation. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, because a lot of times, like, your idea that you come up with to begin with, it's gonna morph and evolve as you kind of come along, and it is gonna get sprinkled in with the ideas of the people that you bring to the table. So, you know, it's the rare person that comes up with the kind of that billion-dollar idea right out of the gate, and there it is. Look at that. Yeah, exactly. Like, some people win the lottery, and some people don't.
The rest of us actually have to go through the mire. How do you continue to invest in innovation or your culture inside of Angie's List, how do you incubate some ideas? How do you keep that going inside of your group?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, and and maybe part of it is, Bill and I are, still in the management team there, so we have that kind of have that theory in kind of culture built in, that we're always looking for kind of, okay, how can we tweak and think about what the next idea is. So that's kind of a continual, like, testing, like any idea can be worth testing. It's all about kind of the magnitude of the test. So, think about it in that regard. Like, yeah, I think that's worth kind of testing. Let's go test it maybe in this market by itself or something. Right. But it's also about mitigating the risk in that innovation.
I think you touched on it, is that quick testing can actually tell you whether or not this is, as opposed to thinking through and
right. You might have, and you don't even know the bias you might have. It's like, kind of test lots, test often.
Very good. Final thoughts about this summit and just the Forbes experience.
Well, I'm just excited to see this conference kind of get the traction that it is. I mean, I was talking to Paul. He said that it's expanding further across the country. That's exciting. It's exciting to see that. I love to see the Midwest, being a big part of that.
Absolutely. Last thing, do you have any parting words for an entrepreneur that's looking at your organization? Hey, that's a great idea. What would you give if you could say anything to anybody? What would you give as a word of wisdom for a new entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think kind of if you've got your idea, give it time, kind of commit to it, give it a chance to get off the ground. That perseverance is important, and that is a hard thing to do. I mean, I was like, in many ways, being 22 with no other commitments in life, that was a very safe time for me to test. Right. It's not always that easy when you're like, okay, I do have a family and a mortgage and things like that. But kind of
pulled away from
so see if you can build yourself a safety net enough that you can actually give it the run rate it's going to need, because it's going to take a little bit of time.
Excellent. Well, we're certainly watching Angie's List, and we're always paying attention to the innovation that you guys have. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Today.